Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. Monster Mile, Denny Hamlin, Tame the Monster, number 4, plus NTT INDYCAR Series Alex Palou Championship may not be exactly 100% wrapped up with him and Pato Award. World Rally Championship, major upset, and MotoGP, no major surprise. I'm Joe San Diego. With me, Kobe Lambert from Grid Tonight, Tanner Smith, editor from Pitbox Pros, Matthew Bro from Grid Network TV joining us. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin the Shell, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. Link in the video description to invest in us through Patreon, so your investment is secure. It goes to helping us here at the Grid Network. You can also do YouTube Super Chat, buy me a coffee right here on the air. We'll thank you on the air. And of course, the simplest way to support us, like, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. We're getting close to 1,700 followers. Across social media, we're at Grid Network TV, gridnetworktv.com, where I know, Matthew, you've been working on your article for recapping the NASCAR Cup Series. So let's start with that NASCAR Cup Series at Dover Motor Speedway. Caution-free stage 1, except for the competition caution, which Tanner and I talked about, came out on lap 35. Stage 2 was also caution-free, but in stage 3, that pattern continued. Christopher Bell spinning early while leading, actually. Then we saw a brief caution much later on for rain. Then the larger rain system showed up, and that's where we had, again, heavy rain, red flag, and got to remember, Dover has no lights. We were 14 laps away from the finish. We went into double overtime for this race. 2 cautions later, after all was said and done, Denny Hamlin held off Chase Briscoe to get the win, and right before we went on the air, tech was completed, so the results are official. Denny Hamlin, your winner. He has now gotten into where he has 3 wins here at Dover, 4th this year, so he leads all the drivers, and he is closer to 60 career wins in the Cup Series. Tanner, is Hamlin the first driver we could say is a championship 4 contender?
I would say if we're talking about the full field here, then he's probably the only one we can certainly look to pencil in compared to the competition. Obviously, you had Bell and Larson, the other 2 oval-centric drivers, trying to make sure I pick my words here properly. You had the other 2 that are tied with him in wins that had a chance to compete with him today. Unfortunately, Shane Van Gisbergen, his day never even got off the ground before it was over, unfortunately for him and the 88 team. But Bell and Larson spent a good deal of their race, especially towards the end of it, battling with Hamlin for the win. And I just felt like Hamlin raced like he had it all under control pretty much all day long. And even when he didn't have the lead, he raced with a poise that, frankly, we haven't seen out of him in his 20 years. And I know it sounds insane to say for a 44-year-old, but, I mean, is this the best version of Denny Hamlin we've ever seen? I mean, obviously you can look back at the 2020 season and the 2010 season and the 2019 seasons as like some of his more banner years, but at the same time, I feel like Hamlin is more locked in than we've ever seen him before, and it just seems like the 11 team, despite switching crew chiefs before the year started, seem to be clicking on all cylinders. So as far as the rest of the field is concerned, Denny Hamlin's putting them on notice that he is ready to win a championship, and he's ready to win it this year.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I think Denny Hamlin, I think all 3 of us said that he's one of those drivers that every year you think he's going to at least make the round of 8. And just what Tanner said as well, like, I don't know if Denny Hamlin's really ever shown that he's on a downhill slide. Like, no offense to Kyle Busch, one of the greatest, if not the greatest to ever do it in the sport, but he's slipping a little bit. But Denny Hamlin, even in his age, is just continuing to go out and put on clinics every single week. And it just shows that no matter what you throw at Denny Hamlin, whether it's the lawsuit and stuff, whether it's just missing a race because of his newborn child, so anytime there's adversity, even though that's not really adversity, but you know what I mean, there's always something that limits the race like his race weekend prep and stuff like that. But he just gets it done week in and week out. When whether it was 2020, 21, or 2010, like Tanner said, it just seems like Denny Hamlin knows what he's doing. And I think he continues to solidify the case each year, not only why he should be a championship for contender every year, but I think he might be the greatest to ever do it that's never won a championship. And I think this could be the year where we can change that statement from greatest without a championship to one of the greatest with a championship in general. So I think he is. And then he's the only one who I think's consistently been consistent, except I'd argue Chase Elliott has been quietly good all year. I mean, Chase Elliott just overtook William Byron in the points because William Byron is having his very long summer slump, where today he was running well, obviously, and then that issue happened where they checked up in front of him. And Christopher Bell, once again. But even Christopher Bell was doing well to start the year. Kyle Larson, they were hot, and then they cooled off. But someone who doesn't seem to have cooled off lately is Denny Hamlin. So I think he's definitely the first we can say is a championship 4 contender, but it wouldn't shock me one bit if someone like Chase Elliott snuck in there. And I think there's a couple sleeper picks that can at least make the round of 8 that might not be locked in right now. So we'll see what happens.
A lot can happen. The playoffs is just as crazy sometimes. So Denny Hamlin, I feel it could be a good pencil in pick for the championship 4. Just a matter of we still got quite a few races before we enter the playoffs. And, of course, the playoff picture looking more and more clear now when it comes to who's in and who's out. Yellow means they're within that 60-point difference because, of course, 60 points max you could get at a NASCAR race. Red means you're outside. One big question, though, I think a lot of people are asking after this race, did NASCAR make the right call to let the race play out? We have the overtime rule. So, of course, we knew you didn't exactly have 14 laps to go, depending on what happened. And, of course, we saw what happened. We had a lot more than 14 laps of on-track action. The rain dried out really quickly, so I could see where from when it started pouring, and I thought it's over. Then it stopped. Within 15 minutes, the rain was gone. But still, 56 minutes the red flag for 14 laps plus the overtime on a track with no lights. I can see NASCAR. We want to give fans a good finish. But, Matt, should NASCAR issue some sort of clarity on a decision-making rule? Because what if we had 100 laps to go? What if this was the Daytona 500 or the Breakout 400 compared to Dover or another race? Does that change the determination by NASCAR?
For one, it's kind of a tough thing to really think about, just because, one, Dover doesn't have lights, and I think that was the biggest factor, and especially with the Xfinity race, that I felt like they called it a little too early, but then again, I didn't know what the weather was going to be, but congrats to Connor Zillich, obviously. But for this race, it was like, I don't think NASCAR should issue something because no matter if they say something, they're going to go against it, so it's better to be in the dark and just kind of let us guess what they're going to do versus what they say because they're probably going to go against it. So it's with 14 laps left. I was in the group, the Slack chat with you guys, and I was like pre-writing, like Denny Hamlin wins with 14 laps left in the rain delay. Luckily he won, so I didn't have to change much of the story, right? But at the same time, it's like, where do they draw that line? If there was 100 laps left, do they call the race? Like if it ended stage 2, they probably do based on the weather, and the light, obviously the lights. So I don't think NASCAR should issue a statement personally, solely because I know it's going to dig themselves into a deeper hole because they probably will go against it the next time we have a situation like that. But then you go back to the Coca-Cola 600 when Larson finally got there and they called it because of rain. At least Charlotte has lights, but I don't know if there was a noise ordinance rule or if they can bypass that with the Coke 600 last year. So, yeah, it's one of those things. When it happens, it happens. And I think even if NASCAR would issue something, like I said, I think they'll go against it. So it's better for them on their side to kind of just stay low about it. Maybe one statement why they made it, but don't set a precedent that you're not going to follow.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Matthew. NASCAR in these situations tends to slam their foot right in their mouth, so I think that they should probably withhold doing that. as far as, the question itself is concerned, though, NASCAR is never going to have clarity on decision making, unfortunately, because they constantly go back and forth on their decisions. So this clarity that we, strive to find with NASCAR and their officiating has to come down to consistency in implementing and issuing the rules. And for pretty much as long as I've been around this sport, which goes back to the day I was born back in 1996, I can personally tell you that I have seen them call rules that they've never called again before or since. I have seen them make calls and exceptions for people that they would not make for anybody else, and go completely back on them when the shoe is on a different foot. Like, this is just par for the course in the NASCAR Cup Series. Anytime you have to deal with the France family, you have to deal with their endless stream of shenanigans. And today was just another glowing example of that. I mean, honestly, did we really need that last, 4 green flag laps that we ended up getting? Like, let's be honest with ourselves. We tore up, I would say, 7 or 8 more cars, maybe even 9 or 10, compared to, if we just ended the race on lap 385 like we were going to. We could have saved a lot of teams a lot of money, specifically Front Row and Hendrick Motorsports. They had 2 of their cars get completely wadded up for no reason. Front Row had a second car wrecked on the following overtime restart. Joey Logano and Ryan Preece also sustained damage in that incident. I just feel like this entire finish of the race, while it still ended up having a bit of a payoff as Hamlin was able to, really put his foot to the floor and find his way to victory lane despite NASCAR throwing everything in their power at him to slow him down. While that ended up being an extremely impressive win on his part, I would have still been thoroughly impressed with him winning at lap 385 when they brought the cars down pit road for the red flag because of the rain. So just to circle back to the question, I definitely think that NASCAR should, have some clarity in their communication with the drivers and the teams and the broadcasting networks about how they go about these decisions. But again, that would require them to be consistent, something that they have never been in their entire 76-year history. So with all that said, I'm glad that the driver that probably should have won this race still ended up winning it, despite everything that was thrown in their direction.
I have to agree with you, Tanner. I feel like as much as I would love if NASCAR said, here's our rule. If the rain comes and we have less than 25 laps to go, and if it takes more than an hour, we're calling it. It would be nice to have that kind of clarity, but there's always so many situations where it's like, well, okay, it rains at the Daytona 500. Are we really going to say it's over? Tracks with lights, different circumstances. I think it is best for NASCAR just race by race, try to handle it the best they can, because at the end of the day, like you said, consistently inconsistent. It was just one of those deals where for NASCAR, I think at the end of the day, the driver that did win was leading at the end of regulation. However, at the end of regulation, we had John Hunter Nemechek ahead of Ty Dillon. Overtime, the cautions, the free passes, next thing you know, Ty Dillon, he is 1 lap ahead because of the free pass. So he advances. So Ty Dillon versus Ty Gibbs, the battle of the ties for $1 million at the Brickyard 400. Dillon, at free pass, led him to get ahead. For Ty Gibbs, he outraced Tyler Reddick. Of course, 2 Toyota drivers. Now it's going to be a battle of Toyota Chevrolet. Both Tys happen to have a grandfather that owns a NASCAR Cup Series team. Of course, Ty Gibbs racing for his grandfather. But are you surprised, Tanner? Both Tys have made it to essentially the championship 2.
I'm going to be brutally honest, Joe. After we got out of Atlanta with only 1 race winner on the season, making it into the round of 16, I felt like all bets were off and anything could happen. I was even quoted as saying, I feel like John Hunter Nemechek could win this whole thing after he had a solid finish in Atlanta. to move on to the round of 16. And yeah, I'm not tremendously surprised by this outcome, especially with all of the harebrained nonsense after the rain delay at the end of the race. I would have rather have seen, like, I honestly think at this point we need a rule where with 10 laps to go and into overtimes, we just don't do the free pass anymore. Like, I feel like this race between Ty Dillon and John Hunter Nemechek got completely ruined because only one driver can get the free pass. And because everybody just decided to wreck towards the end of the event, obviously drivers got free passes that other drivers didn't have a chance to get. I just feel like, especially in instances like these where there's a point battle on the line, or in this case, a bracket battle on the line, I feel like having drivers jackknife at each other and trying to knock each other out of the way and wreck each other to get the free pass towards the end of the event is not the kind of entertainment or racing quality that NASCAR should be striving for. So, yeah, it's a bit unfortunate for Nemechek, but at the end of the day, I think that for him to have gotten this far with the Legacy Motor Club team is a testament in itself. As for Ty Dillon and Ty Gibbs, these are two drivers that have spent much of their year outside the top 25 in points. And frankly, it kind of shows how much of a farce this tournament was to begin with when you start off with a place like Atlanta that has the possibility of having such a massive accident that takes out half the field. So I hope that NASCAR, if they do intend to bring this back next year, they just start at a normal racetrack. Start somewhere like Michigan, Charlotte, somewhere where drivers have more of a chance to really show their skill to make it into the round of 16, rather than a place like Atlanta where if one driver makes a mistake, half the field gets wiped out.
Yeah, and I agree with Tanner there in that sense too. And if this happened, a couple weeks later, like when they did the seeding and stuff for this tournament, Ty Dillon wouldn't have even made it in the tournament because obviously SVG would have clinched the spot based on where he was he would have gotten enough points to pass Ty Dillon, which he's still ahead of Ty Dillon in the points, not even including the wins. But yeah, I think if anyone, like when this tournament started, right, because obviously not a single person had a perfect bracket after the first race at Atlanta, which I agree with Tanner, and I assume Joe's going to say the same thing. Silly to start at Atlanta. That was the dumbest part of this whole tournament, was starting at a track like that. However, I think if you did your bracket and you somehow ended up with Ty Dillon versus Ty Gibbs, I would say you're a liar. Because I don't think there's one bracket that had this, unless you made a fun joke out of it, like people do with the NCAA tournament, and they were like, let's put all the Tylers in the Final Four, and then let's have Ty Dillon win on that side, and let's just have Ty Gibbs win on that side. That's the only way this would have happened like that. But besides that, yeah, I think it's surprising, and I do think the best case scenario for NASCAR at this point was Ty Dillon making it. So I guess they're kind of lucky in that sense that John Hunter Nemechek didn't make it. And it's also good for Colleague because $1 million to a Colleague racing driver is going to go a lot farther than $1 million to Ty Gibbs, honestly. Like, no offense to them. But, yeah, I think this tournament it's been very interesting. I'm excited to see the Indianapolis race, what's going to happen at the Brickyard. So, yeah, it's just one of those things. I think the cautions ultimately turn this around. And then just to touch on like Tyler Reddick in general, not even just, which I know we'll touch on him a little later, but I don't think he cared at all about the $1 million. I just think his performance, he's just down on himself a little bit, which is crazy because he's still fifth in points. You have to realize that the guy in fifth in points just got eliminated by the guy in 16th, who's going to be taking on the guy in 30th for $1 million. So yeah, we'll see what happens. So this tournament, they got to start it not at Atlanta next year. I agree with that point.
Definitely not Atlanta. We're going to have it, or potentially the bottom team's going to win it all. Okay, we don't need this to start every year in Atlanta where the bottom seed has almost just as 50%. I mean, granted, I know it's a tournament, and Want to see upsets here and there, but you can't have everyone's brackets busted in pretty much one race on one lap in a single crash. With that said, though, let's talk about Ty Dillon's brother, Austin Dillon, and his teammate, Kyle Busch, not having a good season. We know that. I mean, at least they both got top 15 finishes. That's something to hang your head on. But during the cooldown lap, we heard something from Richard Childress Racing saying we need to bring race cars or we're in trouble. Granted, how that team has been running the last two seasons, I'm sort of surprised it's happening now, but thoughts, Tanner, on Childress' comments, and by chance, are the drivers, both drivers, potentially on the hot seat?
Unfortunately, Joe, I don't think one of the drivers that should be on the hot seat at Richard Childress Racing is ever going to even have a lukewarm seat at Richard Childress Racing, and that's the driver of the 3-car, Austin Dillon. I feel like the team has been lacking in pace, and it seems like equipment, but that doesn't make any sense because Trackhouse is aligned with them and completely running laps around them, even though they're firing one of their drivers and bringing in a 19-year-old rookie, allegedly, next season. So, yeah, not only that, I mean, Colleague Racing has been running laps around Austin Dillon all season as well, yet another team allied with Richard Childress Racing. Starting to see a theme here. I feel like when you put an anchor in one of your two cars, then the other car with the 2-time champion, 63-time race winner is naturally going to be slower because of the anchor in the other car. Like, I get that Austin Dillon was, along with Tyler Reddick, kind of like patient zero for this next-gen car when it was being created in 2018 through 2021, because RCR was the team to practically build and test this car the most. So when they came into the next-gen era, they did have a bit more of a broader, thicker notebook than everybody else coming into these last 4 years. But I mean, you could see it as soon as 2023's midway point hit that all of their advantage had pretty much evaporated. And they've been kind of stagnant ever since outside of Richmond last year, and Austin Dillon made well to, completely discredit his own victory by the conduct in which he showed that he was willing to go, like the lengths that he was willing to go to get that victory. So, yeah, I feel like if you're bringing an anchor to the racetrack in one of your cars, then you really shouldn't be surprised that your other car isn't running as well as it should. Like, I think that Kyle Busch should still be out there contending for wins, getting 2 to 3 victories a year, and I think he's fully capable of that. I mean, heck, I think that at his age, he's still probably capable of going out there and getting maybe 4 or 5 wins a year in the right situation. But frankly, right now, Richard Childress Racing Chevy Camaros are not the right situation for that to happen. And I think if Richard Childress Racing took themselves seriously as an organization and didn't want to win their way, they would put someone like Jesse Love in the 3-car next year rather than continuing to try to make Austin Dillon a Cup Series champion, because I think that's the ultimate goal here. Austin Dillon has a championship in both the trucks and the Xfinity Series, and along with Greg Biffle, who is still vaguely an active driver, they are the only two capable of going out there, getting a Cup championship, and becoming the first driver to complete the vaunted trifecta that has only existed for the last 30 years. And I just feel like with Austin Dillon hitting, I believe, his mid to late 30s, I feel like if he was ever going to develop into a championship caliber driver, it would have happened already. So I just feel like at this point, Richard Childress Racing would be better served putting a younger driver in the car, one that actually has pace, one that can actually have any sort of a strength at any kind of racetrack that's not Richmond Raceway. And ultimately, I just feel like Austin Dillon is way better at attracting drivers to the organization than he is actually driving the car. I mean, you pulled in a guy like Kyle Busch to replace Tyler Reddick, who'd only won 2 races at the time. I think that's supremely impressive. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to parlay that acquisition into success, but I guess we'll just see how it goes going forward. But at this moment in time, he has no one to. Richard Childress has no one to look at but himself when it comes to why these race cars are slow. He keeps his grandson in the car because it's convenient and cheap, and because you're convenient and cheap, you don't win races.
Yeah, and on my end too, for my thoughts on Richard Childress's comments, this is a gift card. But Childress, you got the money, to spend it, do something with it. You have arguably the greatest driver in NASCAR history in terms of all three series on your team, and he hasn't won in almost 70 races. What the heck is going on over there? So yeah, you guys definitely need to get some race cars. And like Tanner said, I think the Austin Dillon thing is an issue. He's running 28th in points. He is still ahead of Ty Dillon, funny enough, but he should be realistically when you think about it. However, you're going to lose Jesse Love. I think Jesse Love is one of the three guys you can argue in Xfinity and trucks that is going to be a Cup champion someday. I think Jesse Love's got unbelievable talent, and you're going to lose him because you continue to put Austin Dillon in the 3-car. Whether Jesse Love ends up with Legacy or whether he ends up, I know those were rumors, whether he goes Aspire, whether he goes somewhere else where somebody else moves, you're going to probably lose him unless you figure this out right now. And that's going to be an issue. And no offense to Austin Dillon, but yeah, like Tanner said, his championship chase is over. You have more luck of Kyle Busch randomly saying, I'm going to try to complete that trifecta by going full-time in trucks than Austin Dillon's going to go win a Cup championship. I think you can give Austin Dillon a head start, give him a lap lead, and he still will not do it. It's just, unfortunately, he was great in Xfinity, great in trucks, but just his Cup career, he still got a lot of wins. I think he's got like 4. I know it's not a lot, but more than a lot of the field, right? So they're the drivers on the hot seat? No, but when you're one of the best drivers ever is 15th in points in your car, and he's struggling for when he's usually winning 2-3 races a year, that says a lot. And so you're in I don't know if you lose Austin Hill. I think Austin Hill in Xfinity is waiting for a chance. I think Austin Hill might end up being an Xfinity lifer. I think he might take the Allgaier route because he's taking his opportunities, but it doesn't seem like he's willing to move elsewhere unless given the opportunity. All props to him. Wish him the best. But yeah, keeping Austin Dillon in the 3-car is only doing more harm than good. And he's won some impressive races, obviously, but I think now's the time you got to say, it's Jesse Love's turn or it's some other Xfinity prospect's turn that you want to put your money towards because it just ain't cutting it anymore. And I think Austin Dillon, like Tanner said too before I end my point, I think Austin Dillon is one hell of a recruiter. I think Austin Dillon is made to be on the business side of things. I think if he inevitably takes over Richard Childress Racing, I truly believe Austin Dillon can bring that team back to success it's previously had. But for now, him as a driver, it ain't working. And I think there's another driver, too, that kind of co-owns a team that it might not be working as much anymore, too. I think he might be better off if he takes the next step at his age, too. We're not going to get into that, but I think you guys know what I might be alluding to there. But in terms of RCR, I think Austin Dillon, it's time to either go part-time Xfinity, Cup, and truck, try to get more wins, because I think Austin Dillon is a contender. If he went to Xfinity and put him in the RCR car, I think Austin Dillon wins a couple races a year, even in trucks. But Cup, it just ain't it anymore.
Yeah, I think Austin Dillon, like you said, the recruiting aspect to get Kyle Busch, I think he might be better on the business side rather than the driver side, just making that discussion of, hey, it's time for a change. And because can't try the same thing over and over and over hoping for something different. It's not working out. And considering the day they had, I thought this would be something Childress might be a little bit happy about, but wasn't being. Big picture. RCR is not where they want to be, and they are a far cry of what they were in the late 90s. Now let's go back to Denny Hamlin, of course, the race winner at the Monster Mile earlier this week. Well, he had a week. Him and, of course, his co-owner, Michael Jordan, they lost their charters for the 3-car team. Later on, he goes on to give that December 1st comment saying that everything's going to be exposed. No qualifying, no practice. goes out there, race, holds off Bell and then Briscoe, 2 teammates. Now he leads the series and wins 58 career wins now. And I cannot wait to hear his podcast on the race win, plus the stuff with the charter and what he has to say. Overall, Matt, would a Denny Hamlin NASCAR Cup Series championship be something NASCAR doesn't want to have happen this year?
As much as I want to kind of say yes, I think it actually would be really good for the sport if Denny Hamlin can finally freaking get it done, because it's taken a lot longer than it should have. Denny Hamlin should realistically be a multiple-time champion, because if you look at the all-time wins list, the top 15, I say, even look, if you don't count Junior Johnson, who's 15, you look at pretty much the top 19 in the Cup Series all-time wins. Besides Junior Johnson, the only guy who doesn't have that championship is Denny Hamlin. And I think Denny Hamlin can continue to win. And if he keeps up Gibbs and RCR goes the wrong way, I think Hamlin and Busch are going to end up really close in the all-time wins list. So next up for Hamlin's obviously Kevin Harvick, another former RCR guy, right? But I think it would be great, and I think NASCAR would kind of welcome a championship, but it might get a little messy at it's Phoenix this year. I think it might get a little messy in terms of how that handled, because Denny Hamlin, he loves to run his mouth, for lack of a better term. And I think this would be the perfect kind of, to NASCAR in that sense. And I think even with Tyler Reddick winning the regular season championship last year with just other drama and stuff going on too, it shows that this team loves adversity as much as they don't want to deal with it. I think overall, if you count Denny Hamlin with 23-11 too, because you realize a driver today like Bubba Wallace, who finished 7th in an open car for his first time running an open car, it was his first top 10 ever at Dover. So clearly it can't really be affecting them too much, you think? And even guys like Noah Gragson was having a really good day before that incident. Zane Smith was up in the top 15 before that incident. Todd Gilliland's a whole other story. Riley Herbst, yeah, those guys too. But I think a Cup championship would be great. And although you want to say NASCAR, like I said, would welcome it, I think they would. But at the same time, they probably would prefer a Kyle Larson, a William Byron, definitely a Chase Elliott championship. Maybe not Tyler Reddick either, because I think he can be a threat if they figure it out. But he's clearly really down on himself. I think all this stuff going on with December 1st. But they clearly, like Tanner has said, and like Joe, you have said, by the time we're recording this right now, within the last 48 hours, right? We all said they must have figured something out, because they're going to run as open teams regardless. And it could be possible. But they said on the broadcast too, not to change it, wherever they finish, they get like a third of the money, which is actually kind of crazy to think that if you win the race and you get a third of that, say someone like Bubba or Tyler Reddick get it done, that's a lot less money than probably the guys in second, third, fourth, all the way to probably 15th to 20th. So, yeah, I think a Denny Hamlin Cup championship, you hope it's on the way, just for the sense of the legacy of the sport, what he's been able to accomplish. I think that would be the frosting, the cherry on top, whatever you might eat with cake, ice cream, all that stuff. So, yeah, that's my long point about that.
Yeah, so as far as a Denny Hamlin Cup Series title in 2025, I definitely think that ideally that doesn't happen for NASCAR. Like, if I'm talking to Jim France and I'm asking him, who do you want to be champion? I think his first answer would be a worthy competitor, obviously. But I think his last answer would probably be Denny Hamlin or like Cody Ware. I just don't feel that NASCAR has an extremely high opinion of Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin at this moment in time. And I think that Hamlin getting a title is still less damaging to like the idea of the charters, the idea of, NASCAR's current agreement with the teams as Tyler Reddick or Bubba Wallace winning the title, or Riley Herbst, Todd Gilliland, Zane Smith, Noah Gragson. I don't mention the last four because I just don't think they reasonably have a shot. But with all that said, I think Denny Hamlin finally winning a title would be almost as good as when Bobby Allison finally got the monkey off of his back in 1983 to win the Cup Series title, his lone title in his 85-win Cup Series career. Like, just think about that. One of the other guys that also has 3 Daytona 500s on his ledger had 85 Cup wins and barely got one title out of it. So it's not completely unheard of for someone to get up to Hamlin's win total number and have struggles finally getting over that hump. But I do think that if we're talking about drivers NASCAR would prefer to win the title, then Denny Hamlin's definitely not on that list.
Denny Hamlin, probably not on that list, but the thing is, I feel, as was said, it's going to be more the controversy of the court case, everything going on. Denny Hamlin will still do everything he can to promote the sport, do everything. It's just going to be interesting times for everyone at NASCAR if that happens. And of course, we still have quite a few races before we get to the playoffs. And then once we get out to the playoffs, we're in the playoffs. Anything can still happen with upsets. We've seen plenty of times the first seed do not get there. Just a matter of each and every race will make the difference. Before we switch to the IndyCar Series, Matthew, we want to give you what's your one shining moment from the race weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a fun race weekend. I think you guys are going to talk a lot about this, and I think it's probably going to be everyone's one shining moment. But I think what happened in World Rally Championship with Oliver Solberg, I will let you guys talk about that. But stay tuned because that's definitely, arguably, the biggest one shining moment we've had in quite a while. I think so. Looking forward to the next time I see you guys. Make sure you go to www.gridnetworktv.com. It's right here under me. So make that and then put .com. Check out my story that will be up by the end of the day today, maybe tomorrow, and enjoy it, right? So thank you guys so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of the show to everyone who is tuned in.
Thank you so much, Matthew. We encourage everyone on gridnetworktv.com. Kobe, let's go ahead, switch north of the border, Toronto, for the Indy Honda Dealers of Ontario.
That's right, and it looked like Alex Palou might have been in contention for his 8th IndyCar win of the year, but what was helping his strategy eventually turned against him. Caution flags came often early on in the race, and it was the caution for Alexander Rossi that was the turning point of Palou's race. Pato Award came into the pits as soon as the team saw, the contact in the wall, and then the caution came out, and Award was able to cruise to victory through the field. The race went down to caution due to a crash involving Felix Rosenqvist and Nolan Siegel, but Award, Renus VK, and Kevin Simpson finished on the podium in Toronto. And just for the second time this year, Alex Palou didn't finish in the top 20. He just finished outside of it. And Tanner, starting with you on this one, this race felt like an old IndyCar, race that we've seen, with the on-track product, the IndyCar we all know and love. How refreshing was it to see a race where we truly had multiple strategies overtaken and drivers like Pato being able to move through the field, who said that Toronto was his worst track?
It was definitely refreshing, Kobe. I mean, I felt like what we saw today was what we've been accustomed to seeing from the DW12 chassis since its inception in the 2012 season. So, yeah, I felt like today's Toronto race was purely fantastic. I felt like there was action from the beginning of the race, from the drop of the green flag, all the way to the checker when, unfortunately, the race was ended under yellow due to a late race accident. So, yes, as far as the on-track product was concerned, it felt like the dirty air aspect of the hybrid component, the weight that adds to the back of the car. It just didn't seem to affect as many drivers as it normally does, so that just tells me the field is hopefully finally getting more acclimated. But I'm still a little concerned that the only driver in the Chevy camp that has won on a road course since the inclusion of the hybrid unit last July has been Pato Award, both at Mid-Ohio and the debut race of the hybrid component in 2024 and today at Toronto. Outside of that, it's been Honda all the way. And that still does concern me a good bit, especially considering Pato only won today really on strategy, not exactly on speed, where I felt like Palou and Dixon were probably closer to the class of the field. They just got caught out on strategy and weren't able to completely recover from it. So I definitely felt that the way cautions fell today helped break the strategy up into many, many different layers. So you had, a sector of like 3 or 4 cars that were all on the same strategy all the way down the grid, to where we had probably like 6 or 7 different strategies by the end of the race that different teams are running on. So yeah, at the end of the day, you couldn't really argue with the product we saw today. It was fantastic. There was a lot of elbows out racing as well that even our winner got in on, as he put willpower into the wall coming out of, I believe, turn 4, I think. But regardless, today was scintillating. It was a fantastic, classic IndyCar race. And I'm just glad that we finally got that. We are finally returning to a sense of normalcy in the NTT IndyCar Series.
It was a great race. Great to see the kind of IndyCar product we want to see week in and week out. I will say, I feel, especially once we saw the car in the lead, that clean air really made a huge difference. We saw how with Alex Palou, once he got the lead early on after the first set of pit stops and he stayed out, untouchable. He could not get passed around, pulling a second more lead. Once we saw another leader take over and another leader, it was just the same until we had essentially, in my opinion, the only car that could really go through the field in Pato Award. With that said, I think what Pato Award did and that team with that aggressive call of let's pit now, we see Rossi just hit the wall. If IndyCar says, oh, there's not enough debris and Rossi managed to pull out of the track, no caution, that would have not been ideal. That worked out for them, and I just think it really shows that when you have teams that realize we can't just do the same thing, we have to be aggressive on strategy, just like Dale Coyne Racing, what they did with Ryan's VK, Kevin Simpson. At one point, they felt like they were on the worst strategy, and it worked out for them. So overall, I feel like the track product is getting better. But what I think really added to that element, the evolving strategy throughout the race, the cautions that kept changing things, and really when it comes down to the racing product, I think it's just one of those deals where it's getting better, it's getting to what we like to see, what we want to see. We just have to get to that phase where this is the IndyCar where we know week in and week out we're going to see that.
Yeah, I have to say, Joe, post Indy 500, it seemed like the on-track product's been on a different level, and considering the fact that we're going to have this package locked into place in 2026 and 2027, that's a great sign of things to come, and I hope they continue to get a handle on these hybrids, which it seems like they're doing, and get back to the racing that we've seen. And arguably, since the Indy 500, I think we've seen a lot of that IndyCar racing we saw, before the hybrid era. And today's race at Toronto, absolutely thrilling. And if this event's on the calendar next year after what you saw today, you might want to start planning a trip to Canada, because it was just phenomenal racing all throughout the field. It was really great to see all of the overtaking and stuff. I know the battle for the lead might not have been as exciting as many hope, but it was still very hopeful that nobody seemed like that they truly got stuck in that dirty air and that they were actually able to make a move with the hybrid. So definitely a lot of good things to take away from this racing. And it was mentioned, while Pato Award, it didn't seem like he had the fast car that he wanted on strategy. You have to take the wins how you can get them, right? And today the cars just fell in his favor. And another fun fact, that since McLaren, took over this operation, this particular race team from Smith Peterson Motorsports, this is actually the first time that Zach Brown has been there in person to see the McLaren IndyCar team win. So it was really special for Zach to be on site. It's typically, with this Formula One team, all the success they're having this year on that side of the pond, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And whenever Zach happens to come over to an IndyCar race, they never win. They always seem to win when he's not there. And today Zach finally got to see that. So that was a special moment there for the McLaren racing CEO to see Pato Award get it done. And Pato even came over to radio after the race, and sent a message over to Zach saying, I'm happy I was the one that could give you, your first in-person win as an IndyCar. team owner. And now when it comes to the points battle, 99 points separate Palou and Award in the championship. If Award outscores Palou by at least 25 points in the last 4 races of the year, he would win the championship. That is equivalent to winning all 4 races and Palou finishing 8th or worse. And there are bonus points available for winning the pole and laps led that can increase or decrease a driver's position. Joe, in your opinion, what are the odds that Pato Award can mount a championship drive with 4 races remaining?
It's an uphill battle. I mean, you look at the championship, it's really reduced down quite significantly. And I mean, the fact that it's only a 49-point spread between races, because unless Alex Palou does not start a race, and then you go out there, paddle award, win, get the bonus points, that's the only way you're going to gain 50 points or more. So at 49 points per race, Alex Palou needs to have some bad luck, really. The only 2 places I'm looking at for potential bad luck are the 2 ovals. However, he has won the oval, so you can't really say he doesn't know how to win the oval. It's just a matter of maybe on a restart or on the initial start, trouble ahead of him, and he has nowhere to go. A bad pit stop, which any pit crew can make that mistake. We saw Penske make that mistake today. But that pit crew is very much stellar. They very rarely make mistakes. So you're really at the mercy of those 2 races, mistakes occurring. But when you're looking at Portland and then Laguna Seca, he's won on both of them. You really have to outrace him. And I think really the best route for a championship for Pato Award, go out there. You have to outrace Alex Palou at Laguna Seca at Portland. Portland has not been kind to Pato Award, so I think that's going to be a big test to try to just finish ahead and then hope for bad luck in the last 2 races. I think that's the only way Pato Award really has a shot at this championship.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Joe on that. Like 25 points a race where you practically have to max out all of those 4 races. It's a practically Herculean task unless Alex Palou has a just disastrous final stretch. With that said, the last few races have shown some kinks in the number 10 team's armor, so to speak. I mean, you obviously had the Mid-Ohio mess up where he went into turn 10 and completely blew it and lost his entire lead that he had built up since the pit stops and ended up losing out to Scott Dixon, who has done, jack pretty much to that point in the hybrid era of IndyCar. So you combine that with, I wouldn't call it his mistake, but just strategy putting them in a bad position at Detroit where they got punted into the tires by David Malukas late in that race. And then you have today where Barry Wanzer just completely got out-strategized by most of the field. Like, that doesn't happen very often, but it did today, and it was, obviously an unfortunate circumstance for people like me that picked Alex Palou to win this one. But at the end of the day, I feel like Pato Award has not exactly shown a whole lot of strength at either Portland or Laguna Seca, whereas Alex Palou has victories at both of those tracks. Not only that, it's just such a mountain to climb. I mean, nearly 100 points in the NTT INDYCAR Series. That's almost an insurmountable gap, no matter what, no matter who the drivers are. That's just not going to happen. So, all that said, I think Award has a really solid shot to lock up second in the standings this year, unless Alex Palou ends up completely biffing it at one of these next 4 races and allows Award to have a legitimate shot at this championship, which isn't out of the question, but it would be out of character for the Alex Palou that we've seen over the past 3 years.
Yeah, I think it would be a huge shock if Alex Palou just completely blew his championship season in down the stretch here. And I think for Pato Award, his chances of mounting a championship drive is going to be extremely unlikely at this point. So basically, he would need to go out, be perfect the final 4 race weekends of the season. And Alex Palou, he basically would just need to go out and have the worst luck in the world. So Pato Award, while he could go out and end this season on a 5 race winning streak, and get closer to matching Alex Palou's total of 7 wins. But even if he does that, Alex Palou has had such a strong season to date, minus a few outliers, that it will still be really hard for him to take down Alex Palou if he remains consistent down the stretch. I think Pato O'Ward, can certainly finish second in this championship, and build momentum towards next year when hopefully the field is a little bit closer to Palou. But for this year, I think it's just going to be quite an uphill battle because you need to be perfect and you need the other guy to have bad luck, and the chances of that happening are really slim. But I don't think we should count out Pato O'Ward from winning another race or two before this season ends. I have to tend to agree that Alex Palou, Laguna Seca, and Portland are definitely more his tracks. But I think when we get to the Milwaukee Mile in Nashville, I probably would bet on Pato O'Ward winning those over Alex Palou, although Palou has, finally conquered the oval tracks. And Palou today, finished 12th and scored 21 points with the most laps led bonus points scored. And he reduces the drivers left in the championship down to 4. All 3 Team Penske drivers are out of the championship, though, even if Palou misses a race. Yeah, and once again, bad luck for Team Penske. And starting with Scott McLaughlin, his race came to an end following a pit stop. The tire changer didn't get the wheel tight enough, causing the wheel to fall off, and McLaughlin crashed into the wall, just a passenger at that point. And Joseph Newgarden, poor qualifying effort, started mid-pack, and he got caught up in someone else's mess when, with Jacob Abel, and then Newgarden, ran underneath Abel's car, and thankfully, Newgarden was all right from that, but, obviously disappointed as he continued to having a really, really horrible season. But Will Power was the only Penske driver to make it to the Firestone Fast 6. He got roughed up on track and put into the wall, but he still ended up finishing 11th. And it's still astonishing to me that we're this late into the season and Will Power still doesn't have a contract for 2026, considering, he's the one who's really, leading Team Penske this year, while the other two are having just miserable, not so good and horrible seasons. And Will Power, he does have a 46% top 10 finish rate. So despite the down season Penske's having, Will Power is still performing, despite him getting older. So Tanner, do you have confidence in Team Penske being able to turn their bad luck around at Laguna Seca or Portland?
I would say of their 3 drivers that Scott McLaughlin probably has the best chance of turning his fortunes around, followed very closely behind by Will Power. But I'm just going to be completely blunt here. I don't think Joseph Newgarden has a chance in heck, a snowball's chance in heck, of winning at any of these road courses over the next couple weeks. That's not a knock on him at all by any stretch. I have a great appreciation for Joseph Newgarden, but in the hybrid era, he's only been competitive, it seems, on the ovals, and that's just a fact. With that said, if he were to pull one off, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure he's got a lot of great memories at Laguna Seca after claiming his first title there back in 2017 with Team Penske in his first year with that team. So, I mean, if they can get something going strategy-wise with the 2 team that gets them, a neck ahead at Laguna Seca or Portland, I could definitely see them winning, but it's just not been pace-wise something you'd really expect out of the 2 team. As far as the Thirsty Threes are concerned, I just feel like Scott, out of the 3, is the most balanced of those drivers and has a lot to prove after how everything really has gone for him all season. We're talking about Scott McLaughlin being one of the most decorated supercars drivers of all time, and then came to IndyCar and completely lit the world on fire within a few years. Obviously, this year's been a down campaign, but we're still talking about one of the best drivers on the planet. That's not an exaggeration. That said, Will Power, he's still very feisty. He's still got a lot of fire in him, a lot of gas in the tank, I'd say. If I were Roger Penske, David Malukas hasn't really shown me anything yet, so I'd probably just bring Power back at least another year just to see if maybe having that veteran presence can help pull that team along into their winning ways yet again. But at this moment in time, to say that they're going to win either Portland or Laguna Seca, I wouldn't really have either of them penciled in without seeing some practice sessions to help back it up. I just haven't seen enough pace from any of their 3 cars to give me any sort of confidence that they're going to go out there and get some wins.
I'm going to have to agree with you when it comes to Portland and Laguna Seca. Penske potentially could do it through Scott McLaughlin. Will Power at Portland. Will Power likes that Portland track. He has won at that Portland track. But Joseph Newgarden, I think, is not a contender at all. It just seems he and the road course setup of the car just doesn't seem to vibe. He had the good run, of course, at St. Petersburg, where we thought maybe this is it. But I just feel like that team is missing something, and they're missing something when it matters the most, qualifying. I mean, starting in the ninth row is not going to help you get towards the front. I mean, we even saw Scott McLaughlin was starting towards the back as well, too. They just did not have a good qualifying effort, and that's where I feel this team is struggling. Portland, we've seen in the past the Penske cars fail to get out of that first round. I almost don't know what we're going to expect in Laguna Seca. If they have decent speed and make it to the Firestone Fast Six, one, two, or three of them, they're contenders. But if they're mid pack, I just don't know. I'm starting to lose a little bit of confidence in this team in getting the job done at those two tracks. Qualifying is going to be the big indicator because if they're in the Fast Six, great. If they're not in the Fast Six, they're going to have a long day, I feel, in both races. So I just think it's just one of those deals where we got a lot of racing remaining for to try to get wins. I'm thinking two of them are going to end up winless.
Yeah, and I know a few weeks ago, or it was last week, I remember I said I still think it looks like Team Penske could get an IndyCar win this year. But as we get deeper on in the season, I know we got two ovals. Later on in the year, Milwaukee and then Nashville. Which you could probably say Joseph Newgarden's a contender for that. But based on yet when Team Penske has shown speed, they haven't fully executed and all of that, or just had things not go their way. But if we get through Laguna Seca and Portland, still no Team Penske wins, and there's a legitimate chance this great organization could go winless in IndyCar in 2025. And one note to make on, Scott McLaughlin, this is his, I believe, 5th full-time season in the IndyCar Series. Guess how many DNFs he has this year? Just 4 races ago, he has 5 DNFs. And from his first 4 full seasons in IndyCar, guess how many DNFs he had? But in 4 years, he had 4 DNFs. So he's had more DNFs this year than he has in his first 4 years in IndyCar combined, just to show you, how terrible of a season that he's having. And the thing I really like about Scott McLaughlin personally, despite, the miserable year he's having, he's always so positive, on social media about how things are going. Like, you think, he's a guy who, hold your head down, be frustrated, mad at the world, but he's like, hey, life is great. He's like, I'm living in America. I'm driving an IndyCar, one of the, most competitive racing series in the world. I have a wife and I have a daughter at home, so life is good. And he's also racing in the summer shootout, Charlotte Motor Speedways at the beginning of the week. So despite, everything that's going on wrong in the IndyCar side of things, Scott McLaughlin is still, seems very upbeat about how life is going in general, because he realizes that there are more important things out there. So I tend to agree with you guys. I think if anybody at Team Penske could win at Portland or Laguna Seca, Scott McLaughlin probably gives them the best chance to get it done. But in Will Power's case, I probably bet on him to win a pole or, get in the Firestone Fast Six. But race-wise, definitely think Scott McLaughlin. And also have to agree on you with Newgarden and what's been going on with him on the road in the street courses. And you saw him get out of the car today, he just looked completely defeated. It was like, man, what do you have to do? Like, Joseph wasn't even doing anything wrong. And then, there's Jacob Abel got caught up in someone else's mess there. And, we'll see how Joseph is able to end the season. But, today was just another example of how this has just been a truly horrible season for the driver. Many FC, as one of the faces of the series and one of the top drivers in the entire sport. So I'm sure nobody will be happier for this season to end than Joseph Newgarden. So you can hit the reset button and get back, to being at the top in 2026. And we'll have to see Team Penske continue to work, with his new leadership with Travis Law and Jonathan Duguid, as they try to rebuild this program from where it was under Tim Cindric's leadership. I'm confident they can get Team Penske back eventually, but it might take some time, because there might be some personnel changes over the offseason, and they'll see how they can get back to being Penske perfect, because today was a big disappointment for that organization. And now let's end the IndyCar segment with a feel-good story. Renus BK Delcorn Racing, 2nd place finish, and a Pato Award that happened to have a bad pit stop, or, something goes wrong on his end. This could have potentially given a win to Delcorn Racing. And with 7 top 10 finishes. This gives VK a 54% top 10 finish rate, better than all of the Penske drivers. And before today, his best finish of the year before Toronto was 4th place at Barber, and now on the podium. So Joe, I'll start with you on this one. Is Rinus VK exceeding expectations, and do you believe a better team will pick him up in 2026?
I'd like to see a better team pick him up in 2026. I think he really is showing the potential he has to bring to the team. We've seen him get that win at the Indianapolis Road Course with Ed Carpenter Racing. We know he has the pace to win at the Indianapolis 500 if he has a good, solid car. The big thing I feel is when it comes to Ed Carpenter Racing and that tenure there, they started slipping to just mainly speedway potential, and the road courses, they just were one step behind the big teams of Penske and Reddy, Chip Ganassi. Any team that's behind outside those three really have a lot to try to gain ground. Yeah, we see Arrow McLaren, they're getting up there, but this is where it gets hard for Rinus VK. Where does he go? I mean, really, Dale Coyne Racing, I mean, if you just have to look at their history. If you could potentially bring them to the farms, you could get there. You could have luck go your way. The strategy really helped out. But this isn't a team that goes out there going for wins each and every year. I mean, we saw how Indianapolis 500 qualifying went for that team, for Jacob Abel. At the end of the day, I think for Rinus VK, the best thing that could happen for him is if he just could secure another season with Dale Coyne Racing. Bring more sponsorship, bring more funding. That could be a step forward. If they could keep that team together, build on that chemistry, that'd be great. But it's such a challenge because the competitions are always evolving. They're going to be moving forward as well, too. I think for Dale Coyne Racing, they got a great driver. For Rinus VK, I don't know where you're going to go because it just seems like you look at McLaren, their spots are filled. You look at Andretti, unless they do a surprise move with Marcus Ericsson, who's not having a good season, I don't see that changing. I don't think Kiffin Simpson's going to be on the hot seat yet, especially after this podium. Penske, I mean, everyone's putting already Malukas into the potential World Power seat. Maybe AJ Floyd Racing could be better, but then you're going back to Chevrolet. I just don't know where Rinus VK will end up.
Joe, you kind of snuck it and stole my answer there a little bit. As far as teams that I felt like could be a step above where he currently is in Dale Coyne, because as Joe eloquently displayed for all of us, there aren't many high-quality rides left in the NTT IndyCar Series coming into next year. It seems like most teams are pretty much going in chalk for next year based on what they had this year. But there are some teams that do maybe kind of sort of have an opening, and one of them that I was looking at was Andretti Autosport, or Andretti Global, I guess they're known as now. Marcus Ericsson has unfortunately not been the, slam dunk free agent that they thought he was going to be. No race wins with Andretti since he joined them back in 2024. And just genuinely no luck with that 28 team either for whatever reason. But I also think that if we're talking about the one Dale Coyne car versus the, I would say, distant third Andretti Global car, at this point, is it terrible to say that I would rather have the one Dale Coyne car if Rinus VK is going to be driving it? Maybe it is a little crazy, but thinking of some of the other teams that would be part of the Rinus VK sweepstakes, got to look at maybe Chip Ganassi with the 8 car. I know that, Kiffin Simpson has been mounting a late season charge and has been putting in some better performances, but even still, I think I would rather have Rinus VK, a proven race winner in IndyCar, and someone that can, contend in the Indy 500 practically every year. I think I would rather have him right now than a guy that I'm still kind of like training more or less. Not only that, I mean, the Penske seat is quote unquote open until Will Power signs an extension. I think what's kind of holding that deal up is Power wants more years. Penske doesn't want to give him more years. So they've been kind of in a standoff of sorts. I think that if Will Power can win a race this year, maybe be the first Penske guy to win a race, I do think it's possible that he could earn that second year on a contract, but I just don't foresee that happening. As far as other teams are concerned, I mean, I don't think RLL is necessarily better than Dale Coyne's one car right now, considering that, again, Renus has a podium on his hands, whereas most of the RLL cars don't have that on their ledger this year. So, yeah, Renus VK is definitely in a position where he's kind of like left with not a whole lot of great options. I think I do lean towards what Joe is saying, where I think that staying at Coyne for another year and continuing to build with that team might behoove both sides. But I think if a once in a lifetime opportunity were to present itself to VK and he was to take the 12 car next year, I think you take that in a heartbeat no matter what.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting if VK ended up being a Penske driver in the future. And while, David Malukas has definitely shown flashes of brilliance this season with AJ Foyt Racing, probably hasn't, done enough to say, but hey, this is the guy we want to replace Will Power in this number 12 car. And to your guys' points, there's not really much available heading into 2026. I know a lot of people might think, hey, how about the number 6 car, Aaron McLaren? But the thing is, just confirmed through media reporting, in like the last week or two, Nolan Siegel's gonna be back in that car. So Aaron McLaren looks to have the same driver lineup heading into 2026. So that's off, and then, Penske is an outlier, more than likely not going to be anything available. Ganassi is best bet, of an upgrade would possibly be, going to Andretti Global at number 28. Marcus Ericsson does have a contract for next year, but as we've seen in the last few years of motorsports, contracts mean absolutely nothing these days. So if they wanted to replace Ericsson at Andretti, they very well could do it. But at the same time, Andretti has Dennis Hauger, who is tearing up the competition in Indy next. And if you're Andretti and there's a chance, for an upgrade in that seat, do you go with Renus VK? He's a proven veteran at just 24 years old, which is crazy to say that he's still not 25 yet. And it seemed like Renus VK's been around forever, although he hasn't. You would have an experienced veteran there, but Dennis Hauger, it looks like, if you continue his development, he could potentially, get up to the same level as a Kyle Kirkwood or as a Colton Herta, once he figures out the oval tracks. And I think, that would be a tough decision, for Andretti to bring in someone like Renus VK, who was elevating a Dale Coyne racing team, or Dennis Hauger, who looked like he has tremendous upside to become a top 10 IndyCar driver at some point if he's able to reach this level. But I think based on what's available right now, probably would be in Renus's best interest to, sign another 1-year deal with Dale Coyne Racing, and having the whole offseason, to build with them, try to bring on some additional personnel, continue to have, Michael Cannon, working with the team, who is one of, most respected engineers in the IndyCar paddock, and, see what they can do next year. I do find it impressive that, with just 4 races remaining, that Renus VK has already reached a career high in he ties his career high of, 7 top 10s per season, which is great for him. And I think we honestly haven't given, Renus, enough credit this year for what he's been able to do with Dale Coyne Racing. I think a lot of us, would think that this team, considering the transition that they've been on, in the last few years, we probably think, Renus would probably be outside the top 20 in points right now, but he's not. He's doing, really well for himself, and that's something, to hang his hat on. And it's really crazy because given how awful this team performed at the Indy 500, I remember at one point during the month of May, we were debating, whether or not Dale Coyne would want to continue racing, in the IndyCar Series moving forward, considering the fact, that they seem to have a car in the last row shootout or getting bumped, almost every other year now. But this is, some positive momentum for the team. We'll see if Renus is able to, finish this year on a high note. But getting back to the question itself, don't really seem like there's much available right now. And maybe if he comes back next year, maybe the 2027 driver market will be more, it'll be much better for his prospects moving forward.
Indeed. Well, with open wheel out of the way, we are going to be moving over to the World Rally Championship, which saw a major upset this weekend at Rally Estonia, with Oliver Solberg taking his maiden World Rally Championship win in dominating fashion. He had over a 20-second lead ahead of home country favorite Ott Tanak. Oliver is the son of WRC legend Petter Solberg, and this was his first start of the year. Joe, in our Grid Network chat, we compared this to Anthony Alfredo being called up to drive the number 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports in NASCAR to replace an injured or ill Alex Bowman, then going out, dominating, and following that, winning the race. So, Kobe, starting with you, did Oliver Solberg make the case that he belongs in Rally 1 full-time?
I will say, out of all of the racing series we have followed this year across Grid Network, this is probably the most shocking result that I've ever seen. I think the entire World Rally Championship paddock is surprised by what Oliver Solberg was able to do. That's and for someone who has never truly been in contention, for anything in his life at this level, and then to go out there, dominate, and look like it was Sebastian Ogier driving, it was just so impressive. And honestly, when it comes to the question you said, does it prove that he belongs in Rally 1 full time? I think if he gets another opportunity, and even if he doesn't win the rally, if he goes out there, performs well, it shows that he can do well in this type of equipment, then I think maybe it will show that he deserves to be here full time. But when you have these limited opportunities, you need to go out there, make sure you can capitalize on them. And Oliver did the thing this weekend. He drove so well this weekend. It almost makes me think, of that Scooby-Doo meme, where you're taking where you're removing the sheet from the ghost and it shows someone's face. I almost wanted to do that with Oliver Solberg, and when you take the mask off, it's really Sebastian Ogier, because you honestly wouldn't have known, given how this guy really performed. But kudos to him. He definitely deserves his flowers for what he was able to do at Rally Estonia, for not just going out there and winning, but taking the belt to the rear end, to the field, and look like he's been a seasoned veteran out there doing this year in and year out. Definitely think he has a lot to be proud of. And being the son of a WRC legend, and Peter Solberg, there's a lot of pressure, in motorsports when you're the son of an all-time great and all of that, and you certainly want to make sure you're living up to the family name there. And I think Oliver definitely lived up to the Solberg name this weekend in Estonia.
Indeed. Now, we have Tanak leads Elfyn Evans by 1 point with 6 races remaining in the World Rally Championship. Tanak also won the 2019 WRC Championship, and Evans is looking for his first title. So, Joe, throwing this over to you, who has the most pressure down the stretch, Tanak and Hyundai or Evans and Toyota?
I'm thinking it's almost a two-part question, because I feel like when you look at what Ott Tanak has done, he has gotten the 2019 World Rally Championship, as you mentioned. He did that with Toyota. Since then, he went to Ford. Nothing worked out. He's now with Hyundai. He's now into position of the lead. I think he feels good. I think he feels confident. It is the team, the Hyundai team, that I feel that's going to have the more pressure, because Hyundai, they want to ensure the Toyota winning streak of championship, especially from drivers, which started under 2019 with Ott Tanak, does not get restarted again. They want to make it 2 consecutive years of driver championship, with Thierry Neuville last year and Tanak this year. So I think the Hyundai team has a little bit more pressure than Tanak. However, you look over at the Toyota Gazoo side, Elfyn Evans is overshadowed by Sebastian Ogier, Kali Rovanpera. He wants to bring a championship, because I feel like, as good as he is, all the pressure of you don't have a championship, all the talk of you don't have a championship, they will really mount up big time if all Tanak is to go out there and claim the championship. Toyota Gazoo, they have the data, they have the equipment, they have the team. Look what they did this weekend. They could go out there and win. It's on Elfyn Evans to get the job done. So it's really interesting. I feel like Evans has more pressure on him compared to the team, but you look on the opposite side, Tanak has less pressure, but it's more on the team to deliver and make sure he could bring Hyundai their second championship.
Yep, and as these half dozen races wind down in the World Rally Championship, we'll have to see between Evans and Tonic to see which one comes out on top. And I mean, heck, maybe Sebastian Ogier maybe hops back in and decides, hey, I'm close enough. Maybe I'll go out and win this championship. But with that in the books, Rally Estonia is over, and we'll move over to MotoGP, where it was yet another sweep for Marc Marquez from the pole, sprint victory, and Grand Prix win in Czechia. The top 19 are left in the championship hunt as Marquez makes his march to another title. One rider who was officially eliminated today, but many saw him eliminated early on in the season, the defending world champion, Jorge Martin. He scored his first top 10 finish of the year in his return from injury after missing most of the season. Thus far, Marco Bezzecchi got another second-place finish today and is showing a lot of potential. However, he did confirm he will be at Aprilia in 2026, despite previously trying to force his way out. So, Kobe, I'm going to kick this over to you first. Is Jorge Martin's reputation on the decline with his decision-making and history of injuries?
Well, it's certainly been a roller coaster of a ride for Jorge Martin this year in the year 2025. From being butthurt that Ducati chose Marc Marquez to, be his new Ducati factory rider, and considering the fact that Jorge, just won the world championship, really felt so disrespected, so he decided to leave Ducati and go to Aprilia. And then he gets hurt, in the preseason, and then tries to come back, and continues to get injured, has surgery and has to miss even more time than normal. Then all of a sudden, we get a report that Jorge Martin, said that he's not going to stay with Aprilia, that because of the performance of the bike, that he's going to try to get out of his contract and all of that. And as soon as he said that, it seemed like Aprilia's bike, started to improve. And while not matching the pace of the Ducati, it seemed like that they were improving their program there and getting a lot faster. And then just a few days ago, Jorge Martin confirmed that he's going to stay at Aprilia, and try to make the relationship last. I think obviously, there's a lot of hurt feelings to fix here, and I don't know what the relationship is going to be like with Jorge Martin and Aprilia moving forward. And before, when we were talking about him potentially leaving, we said that the rest of this year would be awkward. That they would just have to try to do the best job that they could together, and just try to end this working relationship in the most professional way possible. And now it looks like he's going to be here moving forward. So maybe they can start over in a way, and try to forget, all the ugly business, all the things that happen ugly on the business side of things, and put it behind them and move forward. If Chip Ganassi and Alex Palou can put behind their little courtroom drama that happened when Palou tried to, sign a McLaren contract, if they can, forget about all of that and have good times together, Jorge Martin, his countrymen, and Aprilia can do the exact same. But certainly with the way Jorge has handled this, it's certainly been very sloppy. I don't know who's been giving him advice. I certainly think it certainly hurt his reputation. And I think, now that, he's healthy enough to ride and had a good result today in Czechia, I think that he can potentially start to rebuild that reputation.
He needs to rebuild that reputation more than anything. The fact that he got hurt, missed most of the season, we know that happens, especially in MotoGP. We saw that happen to Marc Marquez. We've seen that happen to multiple riders before. But then that move to try to say, hey, I'm leaving on a performance clause, where I know that was not the true intent of the performance clause, was to simply say, oh, you missed most of the season and you just don't think you can find a better deal and you leave us. But where are you going to find a better deal? Not with Honda. I don't see Honda being there. Yamaha is looking better. We've been seeing Fabio Quartararo being more and more up towards the front. I don't think they want you either. You can't look at Ducati. So now you're looking at satellite teams, and, well, you just left a satellite team from last year where you became the first rider to win with a satellite team. Why are you going to leave a factory team? Marco Bezzecchi, he got that podium just literally after or before Jorge announced he was going to try to leave. That was over at Silverstone. Now that he got the second podium and Jorge got in the top 10, if I was Jorge, honestly, it would probably help the Aprilia team a long way. Call all the team folks. tell everyone and say, hey, I'm going to be here, but I just also want to say I'm sorry and let's put the past behind us because I think Jorge really may have some trouble. You may have some crew members, some team members that are hoping, let's get rid of him. Let's just, focus on Mark Obasheki to get those points, get the wins. He really needs to earn the trust of the team that some may feel like he tried to abandon, but then, oh, you're still with us because you couldn't find a better deal. Jorge Martin needs to clean up his actions, and I think today's result, that's a good step, but I think if he took another step and just apologize to the team and say, hey, he's committed, 2026, let's go at it together for a championship, and he's not going to try to leave right away, I think that could go a long way. With that said, we're just about almost out of time, so let's go to the grid ranking, where Alex Palou still leads, but his lead drops to 21.35 due to not finishing in the top 10. He is still comfortably ahead of Marc Marquez by 2.64. Marc earned his 8th win of the year, so now he has more wins than Alex Palou right now. Palou, his path to 10 wins will be more difficult. He has won Laguna Seca and Portland, but 2 tracks without a win, Milwaukee and Nashville. Ogier, meanwhile, will race Rally Finland the next round, so he's going to be back in the driver's seat again. He is the only non-full-time grid ranking driver right now and only one in the top 10 still. Kobe, let's start off with you, because I feel like we talked about this last year where he eventually fell out of the top 10 but fell down to, I believe, 13th or 15th position. If somehow Sebastian Ogier wins the grid ranking for the second time, because he did it once before when he was racing full-time, but as a part-time driver, how does that go down long-term in the grid ranking?
I mean, I know we had some discussions about this internally off the air about how to handle this moving forward. I think last year, since it was we thought it would be a one, excuse me, we thought it would be like a one-time thing. It was kind of amusing, right? That a part-time guy could come in here, and win the races that he needed to win and, run consistently. And he was right up there in the grid ranking. So from that standpoint, it's kind of funny that was able to happen. But now that we're seeing this, for the second consecutive year that, if Ogier, since he has quite a handful of starts remaining this year, if he goes out, wins all of those, and Alex Palou, has some type of collapse at the end of this season, there's a real chance, that a part-time driver in this ranking could win the grid ranking world championship this year. I honestly think that would not be the best look, for our metric system there and kind of expose it. So Joe, heading into year 2 of this Ogier phenomenon, I have a feeling if he were to win the grid ranking world championship as a part-time driver, I have a feeling we'd probably need to have more internal discussions next year about potentially making a rule to make sure that doesn't happen, because I don't think it would be fair to drivers from other championships who run and enter every single race in their calendar, and then you have a guy who runs, let's say, 50-60% of the year and goes up there and win the championship. From that standpoint, I don't think it would be fair to the other drivers and riders on our ranking if someone were able to win the grid ranking world championship in that manner. Year 1, it was amusing. This year, I think we need to take it more seriously that something like this could happen and really blow up what we're trying to do here with the grid ranking.
Yeah, I mean, especially World Rally Championship has the smallest season out of anybody, shortest season, 14 races compared to everyone else. I mean, and Sebastian Ogier, here we are, 8 races down. He's done 5. It'll be something else to see how this all shapes up. Still plenty of racing, still plenty of time, but we're getting down to it for everybody. Here is the full grid ranking. And essentially for the grid ranking leader, Alex Palou, less than 5 races remaining for him. So here's how the ranking is looking like, with red indicating drivers that have been eliminated, including a couple of riders as well. All the Formula E drivers are mathematically out of contention. Sebastian Ogier, ironically, is the only WRC driver left just due to his dominance. The top 4 in IndyCar are still left, so Christian Lundgaard mathematically eliminated. 23 positions in the grid ranking, because as you know, drivers fall in and out of the grid ranking. 6 F1 drivers, for example, are still eligible. But Tanner, going to you for this question, when it comes down to this year, the grid ranking, any big surprises from any particular driver or rider this year?
I feel like, given Denny Hamlin's strengths and weaknesses in the NASCAR Cup Series, it's been impressive to see him even put up great results at places like Chicago, where he has very little history of like pace, success, etc. Not only that, he has won at a variety of different tracks. I mean, you look at Darlington, Michigan, Martinsville, and Dover. They are four completely different racetracks with different surfaces, different banking degrees, things of that nature. And he's been in contention to win several other races. I mean, had Kyle Larson slipped up at any point in Bristol, Denny Hamlin was looking right over his spoiler, waiting for that chance to strike and get back by him. But just never came. You also have a number of other races, such as Charlotte, that probably got away from him. You have, like I said, Chicago earlier had SVG and Chase Briscoe gotten into battling at some point, and collected one another. I mean, Hamlin would have been in the catbird seat. So, yeah, I feel like of all the drivers this year, I think a 44-year-old that has struggles at the road courses that are becoming more and more plentiful in the NASCAR calendar, one would not think with the new crew chief that he would have come in and completely wiped the floor with the Cup competition this year like he has, but Denny Hamlin continues to defy the odds and continues to win his fight against the world.
Fighting against the world, and interesting stat, the oldest driver to win the Grid Ranking World Championship, Sebastian Ogier, 37 years old, 11 months and 13 days. It'll be something else if somehow that 11 team could pull that off, change that record. That'll be a big shiny moment if it happens. Let's go to our Grid One Shiny Moment.
Yeah, it's time for our Grid One Shiny Moment from this racing weekend. So let us know down in the chat below what's one thing that stood out the most to you, whether it was NASCAR at Dover, IndyCar at Toronto, World Rally Championship in Estonia, or MotoGP at the Brno circuit in Czechia. And I believe we're gonna start off with you, Tanner. What's your one shining moment?
For me, it's going to be Denny Hamlin. I know I just gushed about him in the grid ranking segment, so I guess I'll be brief here, but as I mentioned in our NASCAR segment earlier in this show, I felt that even when the race wasn't being dictated by Denny Hamlin, it just looked like he had everything completely under control. And once he got control of the race, he never let it go. I feel like the 11 team is as locked in as they have ever been in their history, and it just seems like everything, even though the off-track stuff is starting to, kind of peek further and further into his interviews and his media availabilities, Denny Hamlin is still just as locked in on track as he's ever been at 44 years old, and it looks like he is the only bona fide title threat that we have at 21 races through the NASCAR season. So my shining moment goes out to Denny Hamlin and the entire 11 Progressive team. Fantastic job today to get their fourth win of the season.
My shining moment is going to go over to the IndyCar Series, and that's going to go to Ryan's VK and that Dale Coyne Racing. This was a deal that came together very late compared to other deals. There was a very good shot Ryan's VK was going to be sidelined because it looked like nothing was going to happen. Then it goes to Dale Coyne Racing, which last year, Dale Coyne Racing, forgettable year. Most of the time, Dale Coyne Racing, we just see me as a team that they're there. They're not exactly contending for wins. They're not exactly championship caliber. But what Ryan's VK has done this year to get a good number of top 10 finishes, to get a fourth place finish, and to top that fourth place finish was a second place finish at a street course, Toronto, where they had to come from mid-pack towards the front. They used strategy. And the one thing I sort of feel like this little team was really good at, as the strategy kept evolving and changing with all the cautions, they were evolving and changing. And the one thing I think a lot of teams make the mistake of, they get tunnel vision. We're sticking to the strategy. We're up front. We got the position. And they sort of lose sight of what the competition's doing, what's going on with the race. you also have the weakness too of sometimes the driver or the crew. Let's do this. Then the other side, the driver or the crew member, no, let's not do that. You have those kind of conflicts. It just seemed like this team, they're making it work together. There's a lot of potential. It's just a matter of the funding, potential improvement to the equipment. Let's see what happens. But Ryan's VK, I think he has a lot to be proud of considering where he was about a year ago, where I think by now he already knew there's a good chance of not coming back to Ed Carpenter Racing. This isn't Ed Carpenter Racing. He's a Dale Coyne Racing. But look at the results. I think that he has to say, hey, I think we exceeded our expectations.
Yeah, Joe, I think that's a great shining moment, and I think it was like either finale weekend or right after the finale when Renus VK found out that he was not going to return to Ed Carpenter Racing. So that was, it was not a good look for the Ed Carpenter team there, to let him know so late in the game when most of the seats were taken up. So I think that Renus definitely deserves a lot of credit for making the most out of what seemed like nothing at the time, because I believe Renus didn't even have his contract with Coyne signed until the week of St. Pete. So it was a very last minute deal to try to get on the grid full time for this year. And for my shining moment, I'm going to stay in the IndyCar Series, and I'm going to go with the third place finisher, Kyffin Simpson. I know we talk about pressure a lot in motorsports. I talked about the pressure that Oliver Solberg has on him to live up to his father's name, Peter Solberg. How about, when you have two future Hall of Fame teammates, when you're Kyffin Simpson, you have Scott Dixon, you have Alex Palou, and then you're in the third car. So it's basically like just Dixon, Palou, and me. And when IndyCar announced its charter system that no team could have no more than 3 charters, 3 full-time chartered teams, the Ganassi car was going to go away. Well, actually, 2 Ganassi cars went away. Marcus Armstrong got sent over to Meyer Shank Racing with Ganassi support, but the odd man out was Linus Lundqvist. And I think a lot of us here at Grid Network said at the time that if you had to pick one to stay at Chip Ganassi Racing alongside Dixon and Palou, the one you'd probably pick would be Linus Lundqvist, because Kyffin Simpson had really, done nothing compared to the other teammates where you can say, this guy deserves his seat. But this year, I think we've seen a different Kyffin Simpson. We've seen someone who is, although he's still not on the same level, as a Palou or Dixon, obviously, I think he has certainly, took a huge step up in his development as an IndyCar driver. And to finish on the podium today when it looked like things were going wrong. I remember at one point he was on the wrong strategy, just falling through the field, and then ended up, making a charge there at the end and finished on the podium. Huge boost of confidence for his career. And we'll see if he can continue to develop moving forward, because I think Kyffin Simpson, proved in performances, not just today, but earlier on in the season, showing improvement that you can say he deserves his seat in this series. And I know there was a knock on him, with the funding that he was bringing to the team and debating whether or not him or Linus Lundqvist deserved that seat. But you got to give Kyffin his flowers for the race he was able to run today. And definitely he should be proud of his effort, and we'll see what he can do moving forward as we close out the year. Yeah, so got to definitely give a call to Kyffin Simpson for the great performance he was able to put in today. I think you're muted.
That's a big shining moment. I think the biggest shining moment, as Matthew said earlier in the show, Oliver Solberg. What an effort, what a weekend by that team and that driver. With that said, we're going to head off the air, but of course we'll be on the air tomorrow. Grid Encore. I'll be filling in for Ben, and of course Brandon will be on the air for another Motor Monday episode of Grid Encore. Wednesday Grid. Tonight Kobe will be back. Then we're going to be doing everything we can for the next race weekend with a busy weekend of racing. So Grid Live pre-race, Grid Live wrap-up, and tune in for some special programming as well right here on the Grid Network. And a big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin Deschelle, Mark Rowland, David, and Matthew, who are invested in the Grid Network each and every month right here, and subscribe to us right here on YouTube and follow us on social media. We got the Grid ranking already up across our social media platforms. For Tanner and Kobe, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and have a wonderful evening.